In this video, we will talk about immigration and immigration history in the United States. There are two ways that you can become an American citizen. The first is called natural born, and the second is called being naturalized. If you look at the first with natural born, there are two Latin phrases that we use. Jus sanguinis, which means by birth or by blood, and that's where your parents are citizens. The second is jus soli, which means soil. It's being born on American territory. A lot of students ask a lot of different questions about certain situations. Is a person a natural born citizen if they are, say, born in an airplane over the Atlantic Ocean? That's where you would look at the parents. Is one of the parents an American citizen? Anywhere at any time, if one of your parents is an American citizen, then you're a citizen. Even if they are not, and you were born on any kind of American soil, American territory, like, for example, a military base, an embassy, a territory like Puerto Rico or American Samoa, you're automatically considered an American citizen. If you're not an American citizen, you can go through the naturalization process, which is controlled by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. These are 11 of the steps you would take to go through the naturalization process. Just really quickly to talk about them, you have to move legally into the United States to become a citizen. Before you can become a citizen, you have to be at least 18 years old. Then you have to fill out a pretty good bit of paperwork, the Declaration of Intention. You also need to take classes that would be similar to our civics class to prepare for citizenship. You have to live in the United States for at least 5 years, or 3 years if you're married to someone who's already a citizen. You have to live in the state where you want to be naturalized for at least 3 months, and then file an application. It's a pretty lengthy document. It's several pages long. You're going to have an interview eventually with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services to make sure that all of the requirements have been met and that you're a person of good moral character. You'll take the citizenship exam, kind of like we did earlier in the year with those 10 questions. Then if your application is granted for citizenship, then you'll take the oath of allegiance. Yes, it's a long and complicated process with a lot of paperwork, and yes, it is expensive. But really, we're a nation of immigrants, and so you can see on your screen a slide that shows migration routes from Asia to the Americas. So this is where you have, if you remember from maybe elementary or middle school, the land bridge that crosses from basically Asia down into North America. And of course, this was a good deal of time ago, where you're looking at the Stone Age. So you're looking at thousands of years ago, where you have Native American migration through North and South America. Oftentimes on coins, you'll find the phrase e pluribus unum. That also is a Latin phrase. Do you know what it means? It means from many, one. What that means in the United States is that from many different types of cultures, we're actually one country, or one nation if you remember the difference. Even though we are diverse, we celebrate that diversity, and we still have the similar or same ideas about liberty and freedom and limited government. This map shows diminishing tribal lands, where Native Americans in the 1790s, this map here, were dominant in basically what becomes the United States in 1790. Now, granted, not all of this was America in 1790, but in 2000 you see these darker patches here where there's been a significant decrease in tribal lands for Native Americans over time. Of course, one of the reasons for that is exploration, European exploration. And one of your questions that you'll have to answer asks you, what are the 3 main European countries that are going to settle in North America? You'll notice the green lines indicate Spain, the blue lines indicate England, and the kind of purplish magenta lines are the French. So again, you may want to pause and go and answer that question in Canvas. The Spanish, the French, and the English are going to settle mainly in North America. From the 1500s from Spain in the southeast, as a matter of fact, the first actual permanent settlement was by the Spanish, and that's in Florida, that's St. Augustine. The 1600s from France and England. The first permanent English settlement in the early 1600s is going to be Jamestown, Virginia. And of course, the English are going to establish the 13 colonies. France is going to mainly settle in Canada to the north and Louisiana in that area at the Mississippi Gulf region. During the 16 and 1700s, a lot of immigrants are going to come from Germany, the Netherlands, Ireland, Scotland, and Sweden. So you've got a lot of different people coming to the Americas. The map is showing the Great English Migration, and this is where you have a lot of English immigrants coming to the Americas between 1630 and 1660, either for economic reasons to make money or also for religious freedom. This slide is a graph that shows the exponential increase of, you'll notice that blue line, of the white population in New England from the 1620, that's the Mayflower arriving in Massachusetts, to 1750. That's about 25 years before the American Revolution. You'll notice that the Native American population drastically decreases, and that's mainly due to disease, the Europeans bringing diseases. And notice the line that indicates the black population. It's not really begun to increase very much except by the 1750s. You see a slight uptick at 1750. A lot of people don't realize that there were not a lot of Africans in the Americas, especially North America at this time, mainly because you're just getting settled and looking at establishing in the South plantations at this time. In this slide, I just wanted to point out some people know their ancestry. So this is looking at the German settlements and the Scotch-Irish settlements. Some of you are maybe aware that you might be Scotch-Irish or even German. You see this area here in North Carolina, close to kind of where we are, as well as here, where you're looking at Scotch-Irish immigrants. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Kind of looking at where these main settlements are might help you to understand where your ancestors come from. One of the questions that's in Canvas is, in what regions does Spain mainly settle? They mainly settle west and in Florida. So they settle California, what becomes California, and Florida. So you may want to pause and go answer that. So the Spanish are setting up missions, which is really for religious purposes, out west in California and also in Florida. With Africans, there's a lot of slave importation that starts really to rise again around the mid-1700s. There's an exponential increase. So you see that uptick in the other graph in New England by 1750. But when you're looking to the southern part of North America, that's really in the South, that's really where you have agriculture booming. By the late 1700s, you got a kind of a dip as you approach the American Revolution, but the slave trade is going to be abolished in the early 1800s, but you're still going to have, of course, a growth of slavery that's going to happen just through natural increase, just having children, and so the slave population is going to continue to grow. The main, of course, crop that's going to explode is going to be cotton that's being grown in the South. So another question that I ask on Canvas is mainly, where did the French settle? And the French are going to settle mainly in Canada and in Louisiana. So you may want to pause the video and go answer that really quickly and come back. But you'll see here you've got the green area, that's the 13 colonies for England. Then the French, they're going to claim up, this is actually, there's not a whole bunch up here at the top where it says Hudson's Bay Company because it's frozen, but it's mainly Canada. And then this is the Louisiana area of today. Remember, the Louisiana Purchase is basically kind of west of the Appalachian Mountains. So you may want to, in Canvas for the answer, put Canada and the Louisiana Territory. So after U.S. independence in the 1780s, you're going to have a huge number of immigrants to come in. And so from 600,000 in 1830s to more than 2 million by the 1850s. And so also between 1860 and 1890, more than 10 million Europeans, mainly from the northern areas, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, are going to come into the United States. So the reason that you have a lot of these people coming in from Europe, if you'll notice on the graph, English, German, and Irish, is really because of, the freedom that you have with America. You think about the American dream. Well, this gives opportunities for people who are coming into the United States. Then in the 100 years from 1830 to 1930, the United States population is going to go from 12 million to 120 million, and 40 million of those, of course, are going to be immigrants. And so you'll see urban growth. So one of the questions on Canvas is what area experiences the most growth in the mid to late 1800s, and that's going to be urban areas. In other words, cities. Cities are going to grow really rapidly. That's going to be spurred on by the Industrial Revolution. So that's going to encourage even more immigrants to come. But this time, instead of immigrants coming from, like Germany and France and England, from Western Europe, they're going to come from Southern and Eastern Europe, Italy, Greece, Poland, and Russia, because these areas are going to be experiencing some political issues that people want to escape from. So again, it's urban areas that are going to grow very quickly in the mid to late 1800s. So you might want to pause and go to Canvas and answer that. Remember, urban means city, that's where they're going to grow. Rural means out in the country, like farmland. So this chart is going to show how immigration is going to dramatically increase kind of in the 1990s, and mainly that's going to come from Asia and Latin America. So you've got a high spike of course, Latin American immigration. And just taking a look at this chart at the information at the top that says immigration from 1970 to 1998, it says the steady rise in the 1970s and 1980s reflected the arrival of Asian and Latin Americans, while the spike in the early 1990s occurred because of the amnesty, or forgiveness, that legalized the status of many illegal immigrants who were now officially counted. And we can talk more about that in class. So this chart is going to show the volume and sources from 1945 to 1998, and this is another question in Canvas. You may want to pause, but in the past 50 or 60 years, what group accounts for the largest number of immigrants? It's going to be Latin Americans. So you may want to pause your video and go answer that in Canvas. So the largest number of immigrants in the past 50 or 60 years are going to be Latin American. So looking at our final slide, I wanted to take a look at some questions that a lot of students ask. Can you ever lose your citizenship? Well, yes, you can. You can actually move to another country and become a naturalized citizen of that country. You can lose your citizenship for crimes like treason. So if you try to overthrow America, or the American government, it's probably likely you might lose your citizenship. You can also lose some of your rights if you commit crimes. Now, you won't lose your citizenship, but if you commit a felony like armed robbery or murder, you may not be able to do things like vote while you're in prison or own firearms. So this is another question in Canvas. List 2 rights you could lose if you commit a felony, and that's voting and owning firearms. So you may want to pause the video now, go answer that in Canvas. A lot of students also ask what's the difference between an alien and a citizen, and we also talk about undocumented status or illegal immigration. This is different. When you're talking about that, you're not talking about an alien. An alien is a person who moves legally into America, generally with the intent of becoming a citizen. However, if you move into the United States with the intention of becoming a citizen, but you haven't been naturalized, there are certain things you cannot do. You cannot serve on a jury or hold public office or vote, but you can, like citizens, go to school, have a job, and own property. And so that's what you're talking about, legal immigration. So you're looking at aliens who are not yet citizens versus people who are citizens, either natural born or naturalized. So what things must citizens do? There are things that you have to do or you could get punished for it. You have to obey the law. You have to pay your taxes. If you're asked to serve on a jury, you have to do that. Boys who are 18 and older have to register with the Selective Service, just in case there's a draft. Girls don't have to do that. And you have to attend school at least until you're 16 years of age. Now, there are responsibilities, which are things that citizens should do, but they don't get in trouble or punished if they don't do them. For example, be informed. If you don't ever research about candidates and you just go out and vote for whomever, then, you really don't get punished for that in terms of breaking the law. Voting is a responsibility. If you don't vote, you don't get punished because you're not breaking the law. Showing respect, tolerance, or compassion is important for citizens, but again, if you're just not a nice person, you don't necessarily get punished for that. You should contribute and participate by, say, volunteering. Why is this needed from citizens? Because the government does not have the time and the resources or money to do everything that America needs, to help in every way that America needs. So that's why volunteering is important, but again, a responsibility and not a requirement. Again, make sure that you answer the questions in Canvas and submit those in a text box entry.